You're listening to Trek FM.
Welcome to Trek FM's 50th anniversary rewatch program, where we watch all 729 episodes of Star Trek from beginning to end. I'm Aaron Harvey.
And I'm Daniel Proulx.
We have 2 episodes of early Star Trek Voyager today, Parallax and Time and Again. And I know that Time and Again is one among Daniel's favorite episodes of all of Star Trek.
I hope I get to talk about it time and again, because that's how excited I am, for sure.
All right, so our first episode is Parallax. Voyager's investigating an apparent distress call and becomes trapped inside the event horizon of a quantum singularity. And they basically get their own message back at them. So they have to figure a way to get out of this sort of loop that they're stuck in.
That's the big twist, right? I mean,
Yes, I just spoiled it. Sorry.
Yeah, well, the thing is, like, you kind of see it coming from a mile away, I feel like, in this episode. It's interesting going back and watching these really early Voyager episodes, because just to see kind of how early all of this stuff is established. And it was fun to go back. This is one of those really, really early, really kind of fun Voyager
It's literally the first episode after the pilot.
Yeah. And I enjoy it. I enjoy this episode. This is fun. We get B'Elanna breaking the nose of poor Carrie, whose fate is uncertain at this point, but I have a feeling he's not long for this world.
Or at least for that position.
Yeah. And this is the kind of the... we actually get the quote-unquote the Starfleet Maquis kind of butting of heads that everybody says they want more and more of. And so this is cool for that reason, at least.
I'm surprised at how quickly it drops off, actually.
Yeah, no, I think that's kind of how most people feel about it. But it is nice to kind of get it here. Like, literally, the people, like 5 seconds after the scuttlebutt gets out that B'Elanna punched some guy in engineering, everybody's ready to mutiny. And they go up to Chakotay and they're like, listen, if you want to take over the ship, we can totally do it. And so it's,
you want
it's
to
actually
flash
cool
forward to a
that.
future episode.
Yeah. So I like that aspect of it because, and of course, obviously, 1,000 times over, people have talked about how that gets dropped. But it is really cool and kind of interesting to see that tension right away and early on.
And we also get early Janeway and B'Elanna sciencing. That whole mentorship of, like, I like science, you like science, let's science together. Yeah,
and it was a little over the top, but I liked it. I liked the enthusiasm about it, and like the kind of that kind of just left Carrie behind. I was like, okay. I feel like at the end of the episode, I feel like he didn't even get a fair shake because B'Elanna had one good idea, but that's okay. I mean, I understand where they're going. They have a place they want to get these characters, and B'Elanna was going to be the chief engineer, obviously. And Chakotay kind of made his case fairly well for someone who, generally speaking, isn't the best convincing of people. He kind of goes in there and talks to Janeway and's like, listen, you gotta respect us. So that was cool. Yeah, I like that.
I thought it was interesting. We get a lot more of the early Doctor, which is fun. It just is his gruff manner and his the quantum singularity is actually affecting his projector. At this point, he's still stuck in sickbay. And it starts kind of shrinking and then getting squatter. And just like by the end of the episode, he's basically on his chair and probably like the size of a teddy bear, but also very, very squat, which I thought was great.
I really like that aspect of the show. The effect is so cheesy to me that I can't get past it. I'm like, it's because I would have imagined in my mind, if this was to happen and someone was to explain to me what you were to see, the Doctor shrinks. Mm-hmm. I would have thought he just shrinks to scale. He just gets smaller and smaller. But like it's this kind of flattening effect.
But that sort of makes sense. It just given if you're like, because the way a lens changes light and stuff like that, you don't necessarily have it just go proportionally. It's like it could be. I don't know. I didn't mind that, but I mean the physical special effect itself was not fantastic, but
Yes,
that was because it was 1996 or 94. So yeah, it needed a little bit of tweaking. But this is also personally for me a fond memory because a friend of mine and I watched the early episodes of Voyager, and we must have watched them more than once because I've memorized these early ones. And for Christmas that year, I had a card that you could record audio onto. Like they have them now, I think, but they were pretty new back then. So I recorded, this is Captain Catherine Janeway, the Starship Voyager, near the quantum singularity. Do you need help? So whenever you opened the Christmas card, it would play that. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah, so
nice.
it was this weird, and it came out of no. We did it over and over again to each other in the beginning, and then just sort of I dropped it because I knew that Christmas was coming up eventually, and it's like I wanted to do that as a joke, and then it just came out of nowhere. So that was fun. It was goofy, but So.
Well, it would have been amazing if you got that card yourself, and it was you saying that to yourself. But that doesn't really matter. I'm just teasing.
No, but I actually did get the card back a few years later.
Oh, nice, nice. Oh, he should have distorted it and kind of stretched it a little bit. You couldn't really tell what you were hearing, but that would have been fun.
I don't think the cards are even that the ability to do that even now. You'd have to just re-record it.
Yeah, that's true.
But I really enjoyed this episode. I liked all of the early setup. We've got Kes actually advocating for the Doctor. I mean, you can tell that she's going to. She's very much treating him like a person compared to everyone else. And you've also got Neelix settling into his role of trying to be whatever he's going to be.
Which I imagine we'll probably talk a little bit more about later.
Yes.
As well. So.
Well, what I want to mention in Time and Again is that it's sort of like when I first watched this, it was like, oh, there's another element of time of somehow. It's like is this going to become a regular every episode? So
well, if you've seen that YouTube video of the some kind of something,
well, right, but I mean, this was about time, specifically time, not just So all right,
there's one thing about this episode that I do love, and it's Paris talking in the briefing room about what's going on, kind of recapping it basically for his own good.
Yeah. And
everybody looking at him cross-eyed and confused.
Am I making any sense here? No, but that's okay.
Janeway kind of slightly condescendingly, but with good intent, I feel, is like, this is a difficult concept to understand, which is an interesting kind of thing to do, especially very, very early on, to be like, listen, audience, we know this is a complicated kind of thing that you're going through right now, but it's okay if you don't understand it. This is complicated. It's hard.
Which is interesting because now in so many different science fiction stories, even back then when we had sliders on TV, you had to kind of explain the idea of parallel universes, even though that had kind of been around for a while. And now it feels like, you've got Arrow and Flash and all that. When they have parallel universes or other dimensions, it's just like, oh, you just assume that the audience knows these things now. So they've just become part of pop culture trope, which is interesting. Yeah,
it's fun. It's not the bestest ever thing ever always, but it's fun. It's good, solid fun, and it's a good way to kind of kick off the regular, quote unquote, the regular episodes of the show.
Well, and there's some tension at the end too when they're trying to which ship are they supposed to go to? Is it the one that's going, into the singularity or the one that's coming away from it? And they basically have to look at the back of the Voyager and figure that, okay, it's pointed with the cargo bay open. They want us to go in there. And I would assume they wouldn't have had the cargo bay open when they were just tooling around before.
Yeah, no, but it was a cool little bit of how these two women look at the situation a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. And I like that.
And you also got B'Elanna's sort of headstrong, no, I'm right. And then she's like, oh, no, I was wrong. Oops.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. It's good stuff.
Cool. All right, so should we move on to Time and Again?
I guess, yes, that's what we're doing. Yeah, well, let's do it.
Okay, Memory Alpha says of this episode, while investigating a massive explosion that destroys all life on a planet, Janeway and Paris are swept back in time a day where they must prevent the explosion. And the bare bones of that, that's about right. But we also have a whole other level of Kes and her apparent magic powers that she had that we didn't know about. And all sorts of interesting outfit choices for the aliens.
Interesting is one way to put them.
Yes. And apparently, in sci-fi culture, all aliens wear a uniform or at least an almost identical, outfit. Which,
well, it's like the Power Ranger syndrome, where you kind of have to wear whatever like thing you belong to, that kind of thing. Like the Blue Ranger always wears blue, so I guess these people, they're from this planet, so they always wear their
national flag on their body.
Yes, as ugly as it may be. This episode, man, I do not have much good to say about it, I'll be honest. One of my earliest memories of Voyager, and it is... I remember literally watching this episode probably 3 or 4 times over the years and finding it very difficult to actually stay awake through the entire thing. But, I'm not going to be a hater. I watched it this time again for the rewatch, and there's a couple of okay things. There's a couple of interesting ideas in here. Obviously, the kind of the communicator thing, I thought was a pretty clever bit of writing.
Yeah, I like the idea of sort of you're getting clues, but the clues haven't been planted yet in one timeline, but they're there in another. So you're trying to figure out what exactly happened and where these things are and all that. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah. And then, of course, that what ultimately caused the explosion, kind of mystery of that whole thing, is also really interesting in hindsight. When you you can go back and oh, I see how they fit that in there. That was cool. That made sense too.
Well, I remember the first time we watched this, so when it was live, we'd seen obviously Caretaker, then we saw Parallax, and then we saw this, and we're like, okay, this has yet another kind of bit of time travel or time distortion or something. And we're just like, is this just going to become a regular thing? Because at one point, there was discussion of doing a time travel Star Trek show, and I think that was after TNG, or one of the second or third season, or second to last seasons, where it was just conversation in Starlog magazine and stuff like that. So it wasn't anything obviously that Paramount was saying, or at least not officially. But so we were like, oh, did they just develop that idea and then throw some of that into here? But it just turned out that there happened to be a lot of time related items in these early episodes.
One of my biggest pet peeves about this episode is the fact that this planet is inhabited by humans. There are literally no distinctions made between these people and human people.
That is true. And they don't even remark on that, which is odd.
There's no forehead ridges. There's no they all have black eyes. There's literally no distinction. And I was really frustrated by that, because even the most token of gestures to kind of differentiate these people from us is appreciated, because I get it. You don't have the world's biggest budget. So I can you can put some red crayon over everyone's left eye and be like, this is what makes them an alien. And I'm like, okay, I'm on board with that. But if you just show us a bunch of humans on this planet and then we're just humans too, it really frustrates me, and it takes me out of the story immediately.
They could have even done give them special hairdos or something.
Even what is that one episode of Voyager, early Voyager? We're not covering it, but they all wear funny hair things.
Yes, I think I covered that in one of the future episodes that you will see. Speaking of time, I've recorded stuff in the future that we are now going back. I remember that it's not at all pleasurable. It's that that and episode.
It's okay. You're differentiating them.
Yeah.
You can't just not.
Yeah.
Because it just feels cheap, and it just feels so they're people. They're humans. That's I guess.
Well, that's an interesting. I wonder what the budget actually was for this, because you are using a known location. You can kind of see every once in a while when they're breaking into the plant that there's these pieces of gray plastic or something that they use to cover up the lines for the road. The dashed lines, and they're kind of bumpy in places, so it's just suddenly in the middle of the road there's exactly spaced what you would have white lines are these gray lines. It's well, that didn't help either. You've got that, you've got sort of these outfits that don't feel like they had a lot of time or money put into them, because
they didn't have a lot of time or money, but they had a lot of orange fabric.
It's candy corn. They kind of look like Halloween outfits or something like that. Yeah, there's maybe the special effects money that got dumped into the kind of warp effect that when she's phasering into the, I don't know. It didn't really seem like there was much done to it.
Yeah. Okay, so not to end on a on a down note. Although that really does get to me. And by the way, it bothers me every time it happens in Star
I can end
Trek.
on a good note, so you can tell
Okay.
no.
I will end on my last positive thing I can think of. I like the timepiece. I think it's kind of a slightly generic sci-fi kind of a thing, but it's also kind of clever as well.
Because we always see clocks that are like, it's this and this.
Yeah. But they directly call it out, and they're like, oh, this is 401 rotations and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, that's all right. That's cool. I can get behind that.
It would be really clunky if you actually lived in that society, I think. But
yes, exactly.
Yes, I think I do like that. What I thought was kind of interesting is that they treated the kid actor, the character, as if he was not, he was annoying as the character, but they basically had Tom and him sort of bond a little bit, and they didn't treat him like he was just this idiot kid. It's like, okay, yes, you're an impediment to what we're doing, but we're, he's in a school newspaper, and it's like they treated him like he had some sense, which I thought was kind of nice. And the other people seem to listen to him. And
I do like the Tom scaring him away with the eating children line. I do actually. He is annoying in the fact that the kids can be annoying and
he was supposed to be. I think that was
right. But I actually like the development. Like his tiny little arc he had in this story was actually really nice.
Yeah,
that was cool.
And he stayed with Tom when he got shot. And so that was cool. But yeah, so that I think about wraps it up for Parallax and Time and Again. And Daniel, where can we find you if we want to find you time and again?
Well, they can find me every week talking TNG here on the network on Earl Grey with my co-hosts Darren and Philip. And if they want to get a hold of me personally, you can find me on Twitter at OneUpDan. That's the number one, not the word. Aaron, what about you? How can they get a hold of you?
You can get a hold of me on Twitter. My username is GeekFilter. I'm in the Trek FM users Facebook group, the Babel Conference, and I am the co-host of Saturday Morning Trek, our dedicated Star Trek the Animated Series podcast and all things Trek in the 1970s, and with my co-host Adam Drozen. And we've been very excited that the new USS Discovery has been patterned after a 1970s concept for an early Enterprise, but not many other people are. But that's where you can find me. So join us back here tomorrow for Life Support and Heart of Stone, 2 Deep Space Nine episodes.